Give me a thumbs up if we're ready, Marie. You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 FM and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in absolutely gorgeous Northport, Florida. I have a very, very special guest in the house, Miss Alice White, Commissioner Alice White. How are you doing?
Okay, John. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, no problem. So, why don't you give people a little update about yourself here real quick, just over the last week or 10 days, and tell people what you've been through.
As far as what? I've been out sick. Last week we had budget meetings and I had to do all three of them from sitting right here. This is how I did that. So for 3 days I was stuck in this room from 9 to 5. Yeah, that wasn't a lot of fun, and I'm still not altogether well. And we were talking before we went on the air that I'm a person who just doesn't get sick. I just never even got a cold or anything. And I always attributed that to, told my son, my Lithuanian genes. Yeah, my mom was 100% Lithuanian, and she never got sick. So I said, I don't have to worry about anything. Well, I guess as I'm getting older and now I'm more exposed to more groups of people that, I did get something. So, so I've been dealing with that. But the Memorial Day weekend, I did go to Orlando and I saw Paul McCartney.
Nice.
That was fantastic. I've been a Beatle fan since I was 6 years old. And that was just really great to see him there. He just finished his tour, in fact, in New Jersey, which is ironic because that's where I was born and raised. So he finished up there, and so that's been my last few weeks. For the most part, just giving myself the ability just to sit home and do nothing. I really have to give myself permission to do that. And it's okay for the first couple of days. And then it's like, okay, let's go already. All right. I want to get back outside and do stuff. But I just find I get fatigued very quickly. I can't do much until I'm just really tired.
Yeah, and I have to build your strength back up and your endurance and kind of work your way through it. I talked to Pete Emmerich, and he said that he had COVID and he tested positive for it. And he said that he did his meetings virtual too.
Yep.
And that a lot of things are kind of sliding around. And just remember, everybody, hand sanitizer. If you're not feeling well, wear your mask.
Yeah.
Just do what you have to do to protect yourself and others.
Right.
And I think we talked about this just before we got on the air, that I think overall, I think we've gotten a lot more relaxed because the mask mandates have been dropped. And I think a lot of us have forgotten about hand sanitizer and even as we talked in general about let's wipe down the tables a little better when you go out to dinner or wherever. I think we've all gotten a little maybe complacent with what we should be doing just to cut down on germ effect. But it's a good reminder to have these little bleeps in life that make you remember, hey, maybe I need to tighten it up.
That's right. Because I think that's what, when COVID first came out, what it really showed people, showed me what maybe not so good health habits people had, and which is what helped it spread so much. And like you said, we're kind of getting back into those bad habits, and need to just always exercise really good hygiene and washing hands and be aware of what you're touching, and then what are you doing with your hands after you touch that. My mom was such a stickler for that. I remember she took care of my son when I had to go. I was teaching, and I went to a restaurant once with him, and he took his shirt. He went into the bathroom, and when he was coming out, I saw him coming out. He had his shirt on the handle, and I said, "What are you doing?" It was, "That's what Grandma said," because people leave the bathroom and they don't wash their hands. So I said, "Go, Mom." My mom was a nurse, so she was just a stickler for constant, wiping things down, washing your hands, and putting your hair back when you cook and everything. So she was really good with those things.
During COVID, I watched it so much. It was because of my healthcare background. The fast food workers who wore gloves and
Hmm.
took money and worked the register and had the same pair of gloves on.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Who's educating you? Because uh, I don't care what you're doing there. It's not a good thing. And the fact that just putting hand sanitizer on your hands in between every transaction would solve that problem.
Right.
Um, and versus the glove, which is actually more tacky and really kind of setting up the germ for success.
Yeah.
Kind of weird how that all played out, and that during COVID we didn't. I don't think we did a very good job addressing some of that
Hmm.
on an educational level. Not to talk people down, but when you're scared, when you're in an environment where you don't know what's up, you kind of go. I think sometimes to an extreme, and I think we did a really poor job on both sides of the aisle trying to get the word out to, hey, let's settle down here, let's talk some common sense,
Right.
and let's educate people on a more level playing field basis versus making it political all the time.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think a lot of that too is like you were saying how um, what people didn't realize what they were doing and not doing. And I attribute a lot of that to that we don't families don't cook as much as they used to. They don't prepare food in the house as much as they used to, and that's really where you learned about food handling and things like that. And
Right.
if you're not doing that, if you're throwing everything in the microwave or ordering takeout, you're not really aware of those things. And I used to teach junior chef cooking classes for kids, and it was just amazing of what they did. And I know they're kids, but still, for no one to really ever instruct them how to tie their hair back, how to wash hands, and like wearing the apron. They just thought that was to keep their clothes from getting dirty. And I said, no, it's really to keep whatever on your clothes, because all of you came from different houses from getting on what we're preparing here. I mean, you have dogs at home and all kinds of things, and they never looked at it that way. So that's why I told them if they leave the prep table, they should take that apron off if they're going to go into another room and just sit down. But they would just sit around with the apron on. I said, what's the point of that? You're coming back to the table and preparing, and now whatever you were doing is all over
Right.
that apron. So
Right.
just things like that, they had to be instructed because they just didn't get that in home, because we've gotten away from home cooking.
Oh my gosh, the Carrie's a good cook, so I don't have to worry about it too much. When she does cook, I tend to overeat, so it's kind of crazy. But I put a little comment up there by John. He was thinking that people who got the shots and the boosters are getting it more. Well, I hate to tell you, but they are going to get it because it's different variants that are coming through. And I've been blessed so far. As I told you before the show, I haven't had COVID. My wife's had it twice. Her sister had it once in the same household. And I'm still doing pre-COVID everything Big John was doing during COVID.
Right.
I really haven't changed my habits other than I do have hand sanitizer in the car, and I do use a lot more than I did before.
Right.
I'm trying to at least play the game to win. And winning to me is cutting down my risk of getting it or anything else along the way. But I think that we're going to see, we aren't really doing the show on COVID, but I think we're going to see more people who have had the shots. And it only stands to reason that people who had the shots, it's not blocking you from getting COVID.
Right.
It's helping you get less of a reaction from
Right.
COVID so that
Right.
you're not dying. So the numbers are more in line with a flu-like symptoms. You just have to protect yourself and others the best way you know how, which, if we're doing the hand sanitization and we're doing the wiping down of the tables, things are just are settled down. They're going to take their cycle. And just like the flu, everything's going to cycle out over time.
Mm-hmm.
And, COVID will be a thing of the past, and we'll be off and on to the next new bleep, whoever releases it out there in life. And that'll be our next story. But
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about budget now. I truly think that
My favorite topic. My favorite topic.
I can see that. Stop rolling your eyes, Alice. We're on the radio too, so nobody can see that. So if you're listening on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, that you can watch the eye rolling on favorite topics with Alice. But if you're listening on the radio, you might want to watch it back because it is kind of cool to watch your reaction sometimes. But budgets are nobody's favorite time, and how are we looking as far as Northport as a city under what you've taken in during the last week?
I think we're looking really, really good. This is actually my second budget round of budgets. Last year, I was just elected in March, so that summer I went through a budget before we had gotten our new city manager. So this is my second round of going through, and I have to say this year has been really well organized, and I'm really happy with the way things went and how we had the ability to do a one-on-one with Mr. Fletcher if we had questions, to get some answers before we got together in chambers. And of course, I wasn't in chambers, but I mean, there. And I really like that whole process. And I tell you, our city manager just really has his ducks in a row. I'm just really very, very happy. He's definitely very prudent city manager, is aware that these are good times now as far as, well, you're a realtor. The home values out there are through the roof. But it's going to come to an end, and it's not if, it's when, because that's how Florida is. We have these cycles go up and down, and we have to be prepared for when we're on that downside. When values start to drop and the revenue is not coming in the same. So he figured out this whole budget with that in mind. And I'm just really, really happy with the whole process.
Well, and I've met him. I've not had him on the show yet, and I look forward to getting him scheduled because he's promised to be a part of the show, and I really look forward to sitting down with him. I've been around him enough to know he's very astute about what he's doing. I think he is city employee friendly. I don't want to say like over the top, but I want to say just like in baseball, you have your players coaches, you have your player city managers too, and I think he's really gotten himself educated on the city in a really fast, efficient way. And he's counted on some people who have been connected with the city for many, many years to do that.
Right.
Is that what you see too?
Definitely. I definitely get a sense of that he truly respects staff and he values their input. Because again, I said this when we were going through the hiring process, I view a city manager as the CEO. It's his or her job to lead the city, financially, and to put the best people in place to get that done. That is his responsibility. And I just see that he always allows staff to answer questions, and I just really admired that. And I think that really gave me a lot of confidence that whatever is in that huge budget binder is for real, and it is accurate, and I can definitely accept it because I know it's gone through the paces with all the departments, and this is what they came up with. He went through it, and I have the utmost confidence in what he does.
So are we expecting a tax increase?
At the millage rate, no. The millage rate will be the same, but of course our property values went up.
Well, and I can say this out loud. A lot of us, our property values went up, and we're enjoying that.
Yeah.
While we can take advantage of certain options that we have with our property, with that in mind, when the property values go up like they have, people kind of get a little skittish when tax season comes back around because they're like, well, why did my tax rate go up? Well, because your property value went up.
Right. And then the actual rate didn't go up. And that is something that I have conversations with residents pretty often about that, when I tell them that your taxes, the tax bill went up, but it's not because of the millage rate, because it's like you said, it's because of the value of your property. And I have also conversations with people that it's just not very logical. I have to say, some people think that whatever was the property value when you bought your house should remain the same while you live in your house, something like that. And I said, that is just so illogical. I mean, but you can't even have a conversation about that, because as we know, goods and services go up, everything goes up. And that's pretty much what the increase in property values accounts for, that what should stay the same is that millage rate. And I have to tell you, John, I moved here in 1990, and the millage rate at that time was $4.76. It was a whole dollar more than what it is today. But even then, if you do the math, that's based on per $1,000 of tax assessed value. So even a $1 difference on a house that has a tax assessment of $100,000, that would be an additional $100. And so you're talking about $8 a month. I mean, that is still not something to say, gee, that's going to really, that's going to break my bank. But that's not something we want to see. We don't want to see that millage rate go up. And again, it was that high because Northport had had such a low level of property values at the time, but you still had services that had to get done. But our services were a lot less. When I first moved here, there were 3 police vehicles at any given time on the road. 3. I never saw a police. I never saw a police officer.
And I'll bet you knew all 3 police officers that drove them.
That's right. And I never saw that. We never saw the cars. It was just, they would be on 41 in the busy areas, but never saw them around here. So things change. We expect a certain level of service, and that's for all of the city. I mean, at that time, very few people were living east of Toledo Blade. So, they would maybe go out there once in a blue moon, but now that, you have to regularly patrol out there, and that area has to be serviced with fire and EMS. So those things all cost money, and people have to accept that.
We talk about services, but a lot of times people tend to forget why they're there. Our insurance with our fire department placement, home insurance is actually cheaper here than some places in Charlotte County because of the location of our fire departments.
That's right.
And people don't really realize that, because some people live here. Northport have been here a long time, and they just are kind of built into the Northport side of things. Well, when we used to have less fire departments and you lived away from outside of 5 miles from a fire department in Northport,
right,
you were getting a higher rate on your homeowner's insurance, almost double.
Yes. Yes.
There are some
and that was also the placement of the fire hydrants, how close you were to a fire hydrant. And when I looking for my property in 1990, and I've said this before, I had a few boxes that I had to check. One was I wanted to be on city water. I wanted city water. And the way that my realtor, because I did get a realtor to find my property, she said, you find where the fire hydrants are, because obviously they ran water to those areas. So there's a fire hydrant right up the street from me. But you're right, there were neighborhoods that had no access to a fire hydrant. And then when Northport, the only one fire station was the one that it was on Northport Boulevard. And of course, that was the old one before they built the new one. But when they got this pumper truck, it was, I think it was for water, because that gave them the ability to go into areas that didn't have a fire hydrant. And our ratings, reflected that. People were able to get a break on their homeowners insurance just because of getting that additional truck at that time. So you're right. People don't realize how far we've come with even providing a service like fire.
I agree. And if you move outside of where we're at and you're unfortunate enough to be outside of that 5 mile limit, you're going to find out that the reason Northport is kind of aggressive with service is that we're strategically placing some of these things, along with the fact that we're strategically placing police department and strategizing that side of it, because we are one of the largest landmass cities in the state.
In the state, right? And do you know that we're the ninth fast? You probably know this. Again, you're being the realtor, you know all these stats. But for the benefit of our listeners, that we're the ninth fastest growing city in the entire country. That is just amazing. When I heard that, I couldn't believe that. So that comes with some baggage, you know, if I can put it that way, that we have to provide for all of those people that are moving here. And like you said, fire service and police service, that costs money, and we have to keep up with it. And I was always impressed with Fire Chief Titus when I first met him, that he talked about his 10-year plan, that prior to him coming on, they didn't really have that much of a plan. It was like, oh, gee, we need this. Okay, now we have to budget. But now they have a plan that goes out for 10 years. So they know when something is going to be at the end of its life cycle, so to speak, where they have to replace something, or when do they need a new station, where that station's going to go, and they start budgeting for it now, not like, oh, gee, we need another firehouse. Because, you know, the public works, well, not the one now, but the other public, not the new public works building, but that other one that's on Price, that was the temporary firehouse that they had to put there, because when we started building, you know, eastward in the city, like you said, we were more than 5 miles away from that firehouse. So that was where the fire trucks were housed for a while.
So I'm going to go back to Ginger. She had posted that the workshops last week were extremely informative. If people haven't seen or been a part of a workshop, why would Ginger use those words? And I'm gonna have you guess at why, but you yourself are kind of involved now. I don't know how you were involved with the budgeting prior to you becoming a commissioner, but this is kind of a new side of things for you too.
Right.
So kind of give your take on that.
Well, informative, because every department, you know, comes up to the plate, so to speak. They come up there. These are the things that they need for the coming year, or increases that they need to provide the same level of service. There's also projects that are in the works, and either they're funded for this year, or they were labeled as not being funded, meaning there wasn't enough money for that, but it's a page, so we know at least where we have to go to get there. For example, in the police budget, there are new officers being hired, but there was also positions for 2 police officers that were not funded. And talking amongst ourselves, the commissioners, we took a consensus and we agreed that the city manager needs to go find funding, that the finance department has to work their magic, move those numbers around, and fund those 2 police officers that were initially not funded, meaning we would have to wait another year before they came on board. And so there's going to be another round, of course, of budget talks, and that's when we'll see, did they find the money, and then where did they take it from? And that's what's really what I appreciate about the whole budget process, is that, you know, there's only so much money that goes around, and it's like water. You can only move it around so much, and then you're going to have to make some hard decisions about what gets funded and what stays not funded for this year until the coming year. But at least the idea is out there, the thought is out there from that department, and there's a reason why they even thought that they needed that particular staff person or that particular software or something, because obviously there's a need for it. And just to bring that up, and that's what I found to be really informative this year, because last year I didn't really appreciate that as much as I did this year.
Nice. So I got a question, and you know Chuck English, so I don't know if he's listening right now, but he texted me earlier, and he's talking about uh, reducing the level of service of parks from 10 acres for 1,000 residents to 8 acres per 1,000 residents. Can you kind of, and he even said something about 4 acres. Can you
Right.
kind of explain
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, he's absolutely right. That impact, and that has to do with impact fees. When we determine impact fees, it's based on what level of service you're going to provide, because the new development then has to accommodate that level of service. And before, it was always based on that we would have park space and open space that was equivalent to 10 acres per, what did you say, 1,000 residents? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Right. However, that resulted in a higher impact fee. So in order to, when we were talking about reducing impact fees for commercial development, that was a very high impact, which I'll be honest with you, I don't have a problem with that. Impact fees are a one-shot deal. You have one time to capture that money and to provide for the things that need to be provided for because of that new development. You're never going to have another chance to get that. We also saw what happened when you don't collect enough impact fees with Price Boulevard, for example, that, you know, the new development should have paid for that widening a long time ago. So what he's talking about is the park impact fees that is being reduced and the only way to do that is to reduce your level of service, is to reduce going from 10 acres per 1,000 residents down to, I think, what is that, at 4 acres now?
Eight and 4.
Yeah, and no, I'm not a fan of that. We as we become more urbanized, we do need to, that green space becomes more and more important, and especially our parks. Because those are the amenities, those are the things that are on what I call the proactive side of the equation, that if you can provide a healthy well-being for people and opportunities for them to be socially more in tune with what's going on, and just be happy, you're less likely to have a need for police and EMS and things like that, because they're going to have a healthier lifestyle and just feel better about themselves. So parks are really important. As we know, any place that even the most highly urbanized cities I've been to, I've always been impressed with their need and they're having parks and green spaces for people to get away from the concrete jungle, so to speak. So I'm not a big fan of reducing that ratio at all.
So I kind of want to connect the two things. The beginning of the conversation, we were talking about COVID, and then we're talking about parks right now. Just I kind of want to correlate the both together for a second, and just remind people that during COVID we had the shutdown of the parks, but post COVID, all of the data that they're collecting right now for maybe the next pandemic when it comes out, maybe we'll approach it a little different. But if I think we had to do it all over again today, they would leave those parks open,
Right.
so that people would migrate to the parks and have that open air, and be much healthier and have that environment outside that they didn't have during the last pandemic because of lack of education,
Right.
which we also talked about. I think educational wise, these are all good things for the both parties, if both parties can learn to play nice with each other, instead of being moronic like they have been in recent years. It's sort of the study post event that we're kind of dealing with right now, and I think we're as a country, I think we're going to handle things a lot different in the future. But I think the whole key to this is to get people, and I hate to say this on the show, but I think people need to move more center. They need to understand that there's two sides to everything that's out there. I don't care whether we're talking about budget. There's two sides to this.
Right.
What are you going to cut? What are you not going to cut? How are you going to make it work? There has to be more centered, and I got to believe that you're going to agree with this. There has to be more centered thinking, just when it comes to like the realization of life.
Right.
There's just so much good that can be done in the center, and versus the two extremes. I get a little frustrated with both parties hitting the extreme button and just putting people in a panic. We went through COVID with a panic. We've come out. Hopefully, we'll come out as a better nation, as a better city.
Right.
I think we're addressing things a lot different. And when you look at the parks as they are today, I think the parks would have loved to have stayed open and been a shining star for what we have, because Parks and Rec does a great job of really keeping our city, um, not just in the focal point, but really trying to be a driving force for the youth of our community.
Right.
And I think that's essential, don't you?
Yes, because in parks, it's good to have what I call organized parks, like when you have like a Dallas White and there's playground equipment and there's sections like that. But parks also is things like the natural trails that are not organized, and that's how I refer to when I would lead hikes along the creek. That's not a park. There's not benches along there, you sit and whatever. It's just the outdoors, and people need to have more opportunities to experience that, and just to look at the sheer joy of nature and what you will discover that nobody put there. And that's what I always tell people about when they look at the tree canopy and they look at undeveloped lots. And by the way, John, I call them undeveloped lots. They're not vacant. It really bothers me when people call them vacant, because there's plenty of things on those undeveloped parcels. But nobody planted anything on there. Those trees came up by themselves, and yet we seem to have a difficult time, even when we set out to plant a tree. How many times do people say, oh yeah, I planted a tree that died? And that's with having all the resources available. You got a hose, you got to, if you want to fertilize it, whatever. And here's trees out there that nobody planted, and yet they survive 60, 70, 80, and of course oaks, hundreds of years. So that's what I tell people, that to really appreciate that. Not to say you can't cut that tree down, but to appreciate the fact that nobody planted that and it's here. And it was providing for our communities. And somebody did enjoy that tree, maybe looking at it when they came home from work every day. Maybe they did walk on there and admire that tree. And that's what we have to think about when we have our park system, that it doesn't necessarily have to be an organized park. And speaking of those trails, the Greenway project is supposed to be breaking ground this year. And that is the linear part of the linear park that was actually put into place, I want to say 30 years ago. I hate to say that it was that long ago, but I think it was. And that is the 7 miles that goes from the environmental park to 41. But the section between Appomattox and Price Boulevard is set to be done or start breaking ground this year, which is wonderful. And that is going to be a natural pathway and a boardwalk that's going to go over a wetland area, so it doesn't impact that. And that's when people can really get out there and see nature, because right now it's such that you can't really get in there. It's full of pepper trees and things like that. But once that becomes into place, more people will be able to get out there and just enjoy what I call unorganized nature. Just go out there and experience it for what it is.
So are we getting closer to the Legacy Trail completion?
Yes. Good thing to bring up. Yeah, that bridge is in place, and the county is doing a trailhead on the side that the trail is coming. It's on the other side of that canal. And the bridge, of course, brings people over the canal to West Price. And the city is going to be putting something on our side, on the West Price side. The last time I read, it's supposed to be grass parking. It's not supposed to be asphalt. I'm hoping it's not asphalt. That's the last thing I'd want to see over there. But that is, yeah, that is speeding along. If people have seen that on 75, you can see where that's going. And I'm really excited about that. But, when people come into Northport, I'd like for them to continue to travel into Northport when they get dropped off at West Price. And I am a big proponent of having designated bike lanes. And there's a difference between a bicycle lane and a sidewalk. They serve two different functions, and you're going to have cyclists coming off of that trail, and they're not content with riding on a sidewalk. And then if you go on Price Boulevard at that point, there's no bike lane. There's no place.
And you don't want them on a sidewalk. First off, if pedestrians are supposed to be on a sidewalk.
Right.
So if you have bikers that are scooting down there at a pretty good clip,
right,
there and you're walking with your back towards the cyclist, and you know that there's nobody back there because that you just walked it, and somebody's coming up behind you at a good clip, there's going to be all kinds of problems with that. And if we're going to be the city that's wrapping their hands around nature, and we're going to be that town, then we have to step up to the plate and do it the right way.
But you're absolutely right. And it's a point that I've brought up many times, that there is a difference between, like you said, a sidewalk and a designated bike lane. And also, if we're going to be serious about mobility, having people be able to get from one place to another without having to get in a car, you need to have bike lanes, and you need to have pathways that are separate and apart from the road. The whole idea is to get away from that road. One of the big draws of the Legacy Trail, once you go north, is the fact that it was a train track. So you're not traveling along a road. In fact, it's really neat. I actually just did the last new section that goes all the way up to Payne Park in Sarasota. And it goes between, the older developments there, which is really interesting because every single house is different. And people have all these little quirky things sometimes in their backyards, but that gets you from point A to point B without having to cycle along a road. So you're not subjected to traffic and all that stuff. And that's really what a true mobility plan should encompass, is that it gets you away from the road. So you actually have, an advantage over being in a car.
So do we have right now, not that you've voted on this or taken a feel, but out of all the city commissioners out there, do you feel like everybody's kind of on the same page with having to designate the bike lane and trying to really focus in on something like that?
They didn't before. I don't know about the commissioners we have now, but I know when the design plan, for example, was approved for Price Boulevard, there's no designated bike lane at all. And I was not happy about that.
That's a huge mistake.
It is a huge mistake. First of all, like you said, that is it is a major thoroughfare. It's our east-west corridor. And again, when cyclists are coming off the trail and they're going to be dropped at West Price, don't you want them to go further? Don't you want them to go into our town and experience some things and just have that be more of a destination for them than just turn around and go right back again? And not having that designated bike lane, I was very disappointed when the commissioners did not see the value in that they thought a double wide sidewalk would be the same. First of all along Price, as you know, it's full of driveways. That's the worst, because as a driver, as you know, you're looking in the road. You're really not looking in the sidewalk and all those side streets. When you come out, you look in the road, and all of a sudden, there's a cyclist that's coming right at you because you weren't really looking at the sidewalk. And I don't like riding on sidewalks. I only do if there's no other place to ride, such as on Toledo Blade. There's no bike lane there either. A lot of people think that little shoulder is a bike lane. It's not. you have to ride on the sidewalk. Otherwise, you're riding in that road, which is absurd. So I think we're missing the boat on that issue, because it's, again, if you want to bring people in that are at a higher level of getting around, they want to get out of their cars, they want to enjoy some really great amenities, you should have designated bike lanes for them.
And really, I think we'll get people that are going to ride from Venice and Sarasota all the way down.
Yeah,
they're going to take a day trip, and they're going to make that run. They may stop and get something to eat and turn around, go back up.
Right.
The fact that we're kind of saying, hey, when you're done with the trail, either turn around, go home, or take your risk on a sidewalk.
That's right.
When you're talking about people who are, and I don't want to kind of categorize riders at all, but there are riders.
Yep.
And there are professional riders who they do this every single day. Yes. And we're not talking about, I'm going to take a mile run. We're talking about people who are 100% buy-in on their bike.
Yep.
And if they could ride it to work, they would.
Yep.
But as a community who brags about, and we do this, every commissioner in the past has done it too. Look how friendly we are, environmentally friendly. Okay, not with bikes, we're not. We kind of suck at it. But we're redoing our roads. So I think it's something to look at, that I think if you don't cut off your nose to spite your face, and you just admit that, hey, it might be a really cool thing to have. If you're looking to cut budget, I guess maybe that would be the only reason. But I think on Price Boulevard, even the kids that are going to school would benefit, because a lot of them would. I watch them; they're on the sidewalks. They're doing their bikes on the sidewalks. And if we're talking about teaching our kids to get around in town, there's no better way than to have a designated bike lane, and let them get to school on that designated bike lane versus the sidewalks.
Right.
There's a lot of ways of looking at it. So
yes, and you're absolutely correct that there's a difference between what I call a bicycle rider and a cyclist. And you're talking about cyclists, and that is a great point to bring up, that if somebody starts that trail all the way in Sarasota, it'll be a day trip for them to come into Northport, cycle out to the motel on 41, spend a night here, see what we have, and then get on the bike and then ride back. But you have to get them over there safely, and you have to, when they go in on Sumter, what's even worse about Sumter, because I have seen some cyclists on Sumter, there's a curb right there. So if you're in the road and you end up in trouble with a truck coming behind you, you have no place to go. It really is not conducive for cycling at all. And I've always been disappointed that Northport didn't really jump on that sooner. In fact, it's ironic. The only bike lane on Sumter is the part of Sumter that was done first, and that was in 1998, I think it was, that the part that's closest to 75, that was the first segment that was improved upon, and that's the only segment that has a bike lane. And then after that, you would think, okay, we know we should know a little bit more or a little bit better now, and we didn't put bike lanes in, and I just could never understand why that was allowed to happen.
Well, with gas prices at almost $6 a gallon, in some places of the world, we're almost at $5 here. People are finding different modes of transportation. Myself, I went to a motorcycle, so I'm actually showing houses on a motorcycle and getting my gas mileage there. Still have my truck, but people, it's sort of like people find a way.
Yeah.
And cycling, all you have to do is realize that we live in a state that has more days of sunshine than most.
Yeah.
And we live in a town that we actually say, and I'm a little confused right now, because if you're not behind the bike path, then stop telling me you're behind the environmental side of what we are. If you're not going to let us have the bike path to kind of connect the city together, then it doesn't make any sense to me. Why we're touting, let's just stick with canoeing. Let's shut our canals off. And so now we're not canoeing either.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing. We're saying we're bike friendly. We're not. We are canoe friendly. We are kayak friendly. But we've, holy cow, I think we've managed those things by putting in the locations to put your kayak and your canoes in.
Right.
So what's the difference between the ramps and bike paths?
Yeah, they should go hand in hand.
Yeah, and especially if you're going to redo the road. I think you kind of nailed that. If we knew what we were doing back in '98, what happened after that?
Right.
So
yeah.
I'm a little confused, but I'm going to put a question up. We've got about 9 minutes left.
Okay.
I got a question from Mr. English, and he said the part of the question that was reducing natural acres from 8 to per thousand to 4 per thousand. Ask about P3s for Dallas White and Atwater Park.
Yeah, the P3 is that public-private partnership. I think that's what the 3P stand for. That's been circulating out there for a number of years as a way for municipalities to make improvements to places without totally relying on taxpayer revenue to do so. And I know Dallas White is one that I think the sign is still there, isn't it, for Collier to they're looking for partners for that, and that is to redo where the buildings are. The Al Gall Center is closed up; it's boarded up. The what used to be the Children's Closet building, that is coming down. It is they're old, and just to put them back, get them back up to where they should be, would not be something that was cost effective to do with taxpayer money, because they would constantly need that. So the city is pursuing a P3 partnership with someone to come in and create something at Dallas White. And I want to tell people too, when we're talking about Dallas White, we're really talking about that section that has the buildings, not the park itself. I think people are under the impression that the park itself was going to be taken away. It's really where the buildings are, to turn that into something that would be, a destination place, a place to go to. One of the things that appealed to me was, the Cocoa Plum is right there. That's the Cocoa Plum Canal, and that goes all the way to the Cocoa Plum Plaza. And most people don't even know that is there, because when you go by, say, where Lowe's is, it's so full of pepper trees, nobody even realizes there's a waterway back there, but that's the same waterway. And somebody said, gee, you can have an outfit come in and rent out paddle boats, and you can get in the paddle boat and paddle all the way down. I even asked if the paddle boat would go under that bridge that's on Sumter, and I was told yes, it would. There's enough clearance for a paddle boat to go under that bridge, and you can paddle all the way down to Salford Boulevard and get out there and go for lunch somewhere in the Cocoa Plum or whatever, and then paddle back. I mean, again, you're giving people an opportunity to do something, to have something to do when they come to Northport. There's a hotel right there by the Cocoa Plum waterway as well. So those are ideas we kind of threw out there when we were talking about what amenities we wanted to see. Possibly in Dallas White, having some little shops there where people can go and get coffee or whatever. Just some ideas that we're throwing out there.
Well, and changing that park a little bit, it needs it. We have to understand what we're kind of looking at in that area, and it's kind of like a rejuvenation project.
Well, yes, and what's left there, they're remnants of what was built when Joan Development was here. That's where the old the art center now was the old planning and zoning building, and of course the firehouse. It's a brand new building, but that's where City Hall was, and the old firehouse. So those other buildings that are there have had their time, and it's time to bring something more refreshing in there, and a place where people would really want to go to. Those things cost money, though. Parks, Parks and Rec. We don't make money off of parks. We're not supposed to. Those are things that is to improve our quality of life, which in turn is going to make us have a better community, in the long run. So it doesn't bother me when parks cost money, because we're getting back a value so many times over by providing those amenities for people. And Dallas White could be so much more than what it is. But it's not going to happen with taxpayer dollars. It just can't.
And that partnership, those are valuable to any community.
Mm-hmm.
When you have P3s, do we have any right now that are on the hook or sort of biting at the hook?
For Dallas White, Collier came back with ideas, and their idea included housing, to put some housing apartments there, and having retail shops on the first floor. And I know a lot of people don't like that idea, but again, a developer is not going to come in and do this for free. They're not going to come in and just give us buildings and then walk away. There has to be something in it for them. So they're going to put up the money. They need to recoup what they're putting up for that. And if people don't want that, like I said, well, then the other option is it all comes out of our taxes. So you have to decide which is the better way to go. Or I guess the third choice is leave everything the way it is and have it look really sad, because right now that area is really tired looking. That's how that's a nice way of putting it. It's very tired looking, and it needs to be.
You got my vote for workforce housing.
Yeah.
I love the idea of workforce housing over there, because anybody that you put there is probably going to utilize the park because it's so daggone close.
Right.
It's going to get utilized in a completely different fashion than it is today if we had any housing over there whatsoever. And what we desperately need in this town is an opportunity for more housing like that, where we build it up and put the shops underneath. That workforce housing side of things can be an extremely valuable piece for our town.
Right.
And so I got to believe that people don't want to do that at a park, but go to any major cities and look around some of the parks that they have, and they put people living around those parks that utilize those parks.
Yes, and especially that location. We were just talking about mobility. They wouldn't have to get in their car for anything. I mean, there's a shopping center right there, and they can walk across the street. The library's right up the street. I mean, that's what you want. You want more walkability type situations there. And right now it's like a void. You have a gated community back there, and never see anybody. They drive out of there. So having that right there on the Cocoa Plum, and having where everything is, and there's restaurants on that access road. There's the Old World restaurant, and there's the Blue Tequila. Isn't that there? Yeah. They can just walk there.
You can walk that whole district and not have any issue whatsoever.
Right.
Or jump on your bike and stay on the service roads, and you're good there. You've got plenty of opportunities to be mobile, but you're also on a bus route within walking distance of the bus route. So if you were going to have to go to work somewhere, say in Sarasota, you've got ways to get there.
Right.
These are opportunity zones I look at, that if we've got buy-in for housing and the shopping and the cleanup of all of that area, man, we're missing the boat on that too.
Right.
To me, it sounds like a win-win. Even though that park is going to be utilized a little differently and look a little different, what's wrong with a different looking park?
Right.
How about leaving it alone and watching those buildings deteriorate for the next 10 years, and then not having an opportunity. We're talking tax dollars coming in.
Mm-hmm.
because if you're gonna have people in the building, there's taxes that go with that.
Right.
So there's opportunities to collect money there. There's opportunities to change that corner and really enhance everything there. But I like the idea, and let's throw it out there to listeners. If you like the idea, let us know. But I've got to go. I'm over my 5 minute. This is Charlie for KDW Radio saying thanks, Alice White. We just talked our way through a whole hour, but I'll talk to you soon. I'm glad you're feeling better.
Thank you. Good to see you, John.
Talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.